So the first thing I would have to do is I would have to put away all of this produce, but I had to rearrange the back first. Because you have to pull everything old to the front and put everything new in the back, and then, you can put everything old in front of it. And so, the first time I did it, I did it in the evening, in the afternoon. It was like no, in the evening. It was like 5:30, 6 o'clock. And the next day, my husband was going to be the one having to do it because it wasn't in my way. There wasn't a lot of it, so I didn't have to move it. I could have left it, but God said, put it away, you know. And so I put it away, and as I was coming out, he was coming around the corner, and I said, oh, hey, I put away your produce, so you don't have to. And he goes, and he walks over to the walk-in, to the refrigerator, the walk-in refrigerator. For those who haven't worked in restaurants before. And so he opens the door and he walks in, and I walk in after him, and he looks up and he goes, it'll do. And I'm like, so I did good? And he goes, yeah. And so I walked away, and that stayed with him. And he goes, she did all that work to help me so that in the morning when I come in, because I've watched him every night before he goes to work in the morning, he checks the area where he's going to be working, and he preps it for the next day for himself because he wants to be prepared. And I like a man who's prepared. I like a man who's ready for the next day because he's watched me and I do the same thing. He didn't used to. Before, he used to come in, just do his job. But he started watching me, and he goes, why does she do that? Why does she do that? And then he started asking questions. And he goes, why does it bother you that the napkins are backwards? And I said, because I hate grabbing a stack of napkins and having them unroll. And he goes, oh, so you're the... he goes, so you're the toilet paper kind. If the toilet paper is the wrong way, you're going to turn it. I said, yes. And as he was standing at the back, I don't know why God's having me talk about this old stuff, but I guess somebody needs to hear it. So he was at the computer, at the delivery computer. He was getting ready to leave. And I walked behind him, and I said, I may look at the toilet paper and see that it's backwards. And I said, and I'll make a note of it, and I'll change it. I said, but I'm not a Nazi. I'm not going to go berate you because you didn't put the toilet paper correctly. I said, I'll just change it myself and make sure it's the right way. And he just looks at me. And then he goes off on his delivery. Now, we had instances like this throughout the year and a half that I worked there. Sometimes he'd come up to me. Sometimes I'd come up to him. So his favorite thing to do on Mondays, because we used to work together on Mondays, and then his schedule changed because the manager in the morning on Monday didn't want him because he made too much money, and we didn't. There were other reasons he didn't want him there because he couldn't steal comfortably with him watching him. So he moved him out, and so but in the morning on Mondays, he would come and talk to me. He'd be like, "So how's the pizza?" Because he knew I always tasted the pizza every Monday, and I'm like, "Oh, it's really good today." And then he'd be like, have you ever tried the hot wing? And I was like, no. And he goes, you should. It's really good. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll give it a try. I don't know. And so one Monday I did. And I was like, I'm not impressed. And he goes, no, it has to be saucy. If it's not saucy, it ain't good. So I asked Cody. I said, hey, can you make it saucy the following Monday? And so he did. He made it saucy. And I tasted it. And I was like, well, that's different. And so when he came back from a delivery, I said, okay, I did what you said. I gave it another chance, and I asked Cody to make it saucy, and it was good. And he goes, see, sometimes you just have to give it a try. And I'm like, okay. So we had periods of like this where God would allow us to talk to each other and be friends with each other. And the entire time that we're doing this, that we're talking like this, the main manager was watching us, seeing the interaction, and he was just like, what the? Does he not realize? Does he not see it? That the two of you are falling in love with each other? And he goes, oh no. And that's when it began. That's when he took him outside the first time. And that's when I got the text of, no, I don't want anything with you, blah, blah, blah. But 2 weeks, I didn't talk to him. And he was like, he broke down and came to talk to me. And he goes, and made me laugh. And I told him, I can't because you don't want me. I'm not going to throw my heart after someone who doesn't want me. And so then I got the text at, midnight, and we stayed talking until 4 o'clock in the morning, and the time passed so quickly. No. Go lay down. Sorry, guys. The dogs are outside, and he doesn't like the neighbors. Go lay down. Apollo. Pup. Hey. Go lay down. Go lay down. Come on. Go lay down. Go eat then. And so, he would have these moments of where the manager knew that he was falling in love with me. And so he began putting ideas, thoughts. And when he realized that my character wasn't the way that this man was telling him, he allowed himself to engage with me again. And so, because the manager told him that, oh, she's a flirt, she's over there, look at her, she's over there flirting with that guy and this guy. And I'm like, me being friendly is customer service. I'm not flirting with them. Like, I'm not asking them personal questions. I engage to a level. It's not my fault these men don't understand friendly people. Like, a woman who's friendly isn't flirting. It's, part of my job. And so the men that this manager was bringing to his attention as the men that I'm interested in, God would have me stand there and I'd be like, oh, I don't like this guy. He bothers me. Like, he's not a nice man. So he would hear me say these things. And then he would watch me. And he realized, you hold back. There are some people where you can see my engagement. You can see me just freely flowing with the Holy Spirit. And with certain people, there was a smile that wasn't genuine, and he began to notice. He began to see that I wasn't open to the men who were flirting with me. And so he was like, okay. And so then God started having me talk to him via text. And so I would start to tell him and start to explain to him that if you see, just because I'm friendly doesn't mean that I have a thing for this person. And I said, when I like someone, you will notice that I can't speak. I get dumb. I act like a 17-year-old again. And so he started to notice that the only one that I acted like that with was him. And he liked it. He liked the attention. He liked the fact that I was not the way I was with him, with everyone. Because that was the other thing, is the manager was telling him, she's like that with everybody. Look at her. You're not special. You're just another guy. So he was planting seeds of doubt, planting seeds of fear in my spouse. And so when he realized that these seeds weren't taking hold, they weren't doing what he wanted, that's when he started to attack the very thing that God was trying to put together. But God will use everything for our good, because now there's nothing preventing him from reaching out to me. Now there's no, Unless he tells him, he's not going to know that we're dating. He's not going to know that I'm with him. He's not going to know anything. And that was one thing I asked God. And I didn't know how he was going to do it. So I asked God early on because I saw the friendship between the two of them. And when I first started, he had a girlfriend. Remember? I said he had a girlfriend. And he would come into work and he would tell this man details about his personal relationship with his girlfriend. And I was like, I don't want that, Father. I don't want him having that kind of openness about our relationship with this man. I don't want an outsider knowing our personal business, things that should be only shared with you, our God. I don't want this man to be involved, to have a say in how my husband treats me. And so God started to unction this man. You know, God, remember, God hardens the hearts of men. Okay? He hardened the heart of Pharaoh in Egypt. And he wouldn't let his people go because he wanted the Israelites to see the power of God, that no man can resist him. And no matter how much that Pharaoh wanted to keep those people subdued to him, God had the last word, and he finally released them. So, similar in this situation, this man didn't want to let me go, didn't want to allow me to leave. He wanted to subdue me. He wanted me under his thumb. He wanted me to beg him to save me. But in that attitude, in that behavior, it gave my husband an opportunity to see this man's real objective, his real behavior. And he understood he's not really my friend. He's only trying to get information so that he can keep me under his thumb. Okay. So the more that this man pushed me, the more my husband realized that he wasn't his friend, that he wasn't the kind of person that he wanted to have in his corner. And the only one that he should have in his corner is God. And so he changed his alliances, because I told him that. I said, alliances are changing and you need to be aware. And God was having me make him aware about these things, because this is my training ground. I'm learning how to be his helper. I'm learning how to be his partner. You know, we were working together, even though we weren't talking to each other, we weren't engaging with each other in this manner. God was teaching us both how to be there for each other, how to protect each other by prayer and by standing up and standing strong. So now my husband understands the level of commitment it's going to take for him to be my husband, to be my protector, to be my defender in the flesh, to be the man that God has said him to be, has created him to be. Because until this point, he was just going through life like, he was just gliding. He wasn't engaging. He wasn't doing anything. Every so often, he'd do something that God was telling him to do. But for the most part, he was just doing his own thing, kind of hanging out, just, living life, not really engaging with his life. Just, I guess this is monotone life. It's going to be what I'm going to be, and I'm just going to live like this for the rest of my life. And God says, in living color. Oh, no. And so the songs, Wednesday, God changed the gospel music to the music I was listening to while I was working, which is Mexican music. And God has been like, I took the songs that were sad and about betrayal and about hardship and, you know, leaving their partners behind. I took those to be about my ex husband and me. And God said, no, these were the songs your husband is going to be singing about the woman he just left. He's like, you've been done with that man. You don't have anything. There's there's not an emotional attachment with my ex-husband. Okay, there's not any more connection. So I'm not like, I can see him, and I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, I don't understand. This is over. Like, why? That's how I met him the last time I saw him. And he hasn't been able to come back to see me. He wants to. He's tried to, and he can't. That's why he had to invent this scam of fear, and it backfired. And so I was like, oh, oh, I didn't realize. So there is a song that I listened to, and in that song, it talks about it's from the man perspective. It's in Spanish, but I'm gonna give you the gist of it. And in this song, the man says, you know, I spend my time outdoors on the streets. You spend your time at home, bored. And I realize that I have been blind, I have been deaf, and I have been mute to speak my truth. And he says, it's been a while now that this hurts, that this love hurts. And this is a love for crazy people, because it's not, neither one of us is happy. It says, you've hurt me and I've kept it quiet. You've hurt me multiple times and I've kept it to myself. Well, no more. Here's me telling you that I don't have to live like this, that I don't have to be this way, and neither do you. So here's the keys to the house. And when you go to leave, make sure you lock the door, because I'm not going to be there to lock the door for you, to check it for you, to protect you. And he says, and don't say that you're my woman anymore, because even if you were faithful, I would not want you back. And the song repeats and repeats, you know, the same verses. And this is the first time that I'm listening it to these songs from the perspective of my husband, of my spouse. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry you're going through this. I don't want him to hurt. I don't want him to be upset, to be sad. He deserves to be happy. And so when we were talking in the beginning, when we were talking and we were spending time together, getting to know each other, he told me that I saw what he wasn't saying, because I already knew that he wasn't with her anymore, because he's not the kind of man to talk to another woman about his personal life with his woman. You know, so he's not the kind of man. Like, I'm not the kind of woman to talk about my life with my husband to another woman. Like, God is he's my confidant. I don't go outside of that. And so, and I didn't. When I was married to my ex-husband, guess who got to hear everything? God. I would go in my room and I'd cry myself to sleep. And, you know, I would tell him everything. I'd be like, why can't it be enough? Why can I not be what he wants, what he desires? And so I understood, because I've been there. I've been in that situation where you leave the person, but you still have memories like they're still today's memories. And so he was telling me that, and I saw the way he was, his face, the way he was looking, it was like he was remembering something from the past, something that had happened, and he was sharing this with me. And he says to me, he was talking, his words were as of that day, like this happened last night. But his face said, I'm remembering a memory as if it were today. Like yesterday is like it's still happening to me today. And so he's telling me, he goes, yeah, I got home last night after work and I could tell she was in a mood. And so she went off to bed, you know. Apparently this happens regularly where she's just in an attitude, and he's like, okay. And normally he puts up with it and he goes to bed, you know, tries to make it up to her, whatever. But in this particular instance, he said, you know what? I can't deal with this today. I've had a rough day at work. It's been a long day. And he says, so I just lay down on the couch and I went to sleep. And I'm like, oh no, not the couch. That's, no. I said, that's no place for you. You don't belong on the couch. And he goes, well, in the morning she woke up and she saw that I was not in bed. She came and laid down with me on the couch. She apologized. And I said, well, at least she saw the error of her ways. But he had this look of sadness, like, no, she didn't, because she still acts this way. Which God is like, he broke up with her. He's not with her anymore. And I did see the evidence of that. He would come into work in tears. And no one else noticed but me and the main manager. And he noticed because he told him. He's like, I broke up with her. He was coming in late, like really late, half an hour and a half, because he was trying to stop the tears from flowing, because he really cared for this woman. And I didn't hold it against him because I know what that was like, because I was in love with my ex-husband. What I thought was love, I realize now, feeling God's love, feeling God's attention, that was never the love that I thought I would feel. The love I feel now is completely different. It's a love of understanding, of acceptance, but it's a love of myself. Like, I love myself. I would not allow myself to be treated in a certain way anymore. And that's the difference. That's the difference. That I love myself enough that I wasn't willing to stay another day in that job. I asked God to release me. And he said, okay, but it's not me who needs to release you, it's this man. I'm like, okay. Let him release me, because I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. They're not appreciating the work that I put forth. They're not appreciating that I am doing so much more than everyone else. I don't need them to go, oh my God, you're so great, you're so wonderful. But I do need you to understand that it's like, wow, thanks. You know, say thank you. Appreciate what I'm doing for you, because you're like, no, I expect this and I expect more. I expect more. I expect more. I expect more. It's like, okay, then you don't deserve to have me here anymore. But God was using all of that to open my husband's eyes to see, so that when he does bring us together, he's not going to share things that aren't for their ears. Instead, he will go to God. And he will tell God, okay, she's being a certain way. Can you talk to her? And God will correct me. God will ensure that, okay, so now instead of judging me or being upset with me or sleeping on the couch, he's actually going to engage with me and say, okay, I don't know if you realize, but you did this, you said this, you acted like this, and this is how it made me feel. And it's going to be a mature conversation about our feelings, about our, the way we are being treated, that is going to allow us to engage in a deeper relationship. You know, because that's why God wants us to be friends first. Because you're not going to treat your friend with hate or anger. You're going to be kind to your friend. You're going to give your friend opportunities to understand that they've done something wrong, you know? And so this is the level of relationship that God wants us to have with our spouse, is a friendship that we won't cross the line. Remember, Jesus said to his disciples, love each other as I have loved you. And this is right when he's being taken into custody by give me a second, guys. This is where this is right before he gets taken into custody, and he's telling his disciples, he's giving them instructions and saying, well, God, wow, see, I knew it was in Matthew, I just didn't know what chapter, and God brought me right to the chapter. Okay, so it's chapter 22, verses 37 through 40, okay? And Jesus is telling his disciples that there's really only two laws, two commandments that they need to follow. And they're the first one is, love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. That's the first and greatest commandment. Love God. Love God first. The second commandment he gave them, okay, is love thy neighbor as yourself. So how you love yourself is how you should love your partner, is how you should love the man, the woman God has for you. Okay? You have to love yourself first. You have to love God first. Okay? That's the first thing. Love God. Make God your everything. Make sure that God is at the foundation of your life. And it wasn't until this prophet that I watch explained it this way. So in the beginning, God is up here. So we're like, oh God, 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 God. Once God has become your foundation, so he's now the bottom. Now it's like, I was the tail, now I'm the head. Because now God is the tail. Now Jesus is the one at the bottom. Now he's your foundation. You're never going to go below him because you've got a strong, strong foundation. You've built your vessel to love God first, to love Jesus first, to accept that with repentance, that the past life is behind you. So now there's a level that you're at that you're never going to go beyond. Because if you go beyond that level, you are lost forever. You will never get back because you have understanding now. So if you go back to the world, guess what? You're doing it of your own accord. And there is nothing God can do to bring you back because you walked away from him. So it's a choice. You have to choose every day to love God. And again, this is these words, when I read them, I put them in my heart. I said, as long as I love God with everything I have, and I love myself, and I love my neighbor the way that I love myself, so I'm not going to put myself down. I'm not going to treat myself with disdain. I understand I have sinned. I'm not free of sin. I've committed sin. And I cannot look down on the people who are still sinning, because then I'm looking down on myself. Remember, Jesus tells his disciples that before you start to poke at someone else's stigma, if someone has a piece of wood sticking out of their eye, don't be pointing it out and be like, oh, look at your eye, look at your eye. Don't look at someone else's sin and be like, oh, you're sinning. Did you check yourself first? Because you've sinned too. So that's what God means, is don't look at each other's sin. That's my job. I want you to love each other the way you love yourselves. I don't hold my sin against me because I know God forgave me. So why am I going to hold someone else's sin against them? That's not my place. So these 2 commandments is what Jesus said. That's all you need to do. Because as long as you hold true to these 2 commandments, the other 12 commandments that God gave Moses, you will never break. Why? Because you love God first. You will never lie. You will never cheat. You will never steal. You will never become an adulterer. You will never do any of those 12 commandments that God told us not to break. Because you love God first and you love yourself as you love your neighbor. Because how can you love yourself and hurt yourself? How can you love your neighbor and hurt your neighbor? You can't. Either you love your neighbor or you don't. And when you walk out that door, when you are sitting in your room, when you are laying in your bed, when you are sleeping, those are the 2 commandments, the 2 greatest commandments that you have to hold to. Loving your neighbor as yourself, and loving God first with everything you have. Because from that, you will never sin against God. You will never break